Hi, I'm Michael from the photo and video team here at Wirecutter, and I'm going to show you how I use Adobe Lightroom to edit photos on my phone. Lightroom is one of our favorite apps for editing photos on a mobile device. It's really powerful, gives you a lot of professional tools, and has a really well thought out interface. Now, this isn't meant as a comprehensive tutorial for Lightroom Mobile. It's really just some tips and tricks and a really simple workflow for how you can tackle any photo you take and make it just a little bit better. So when I'm starting out with a photo, I want to get a sense of the brightness levels, the highlights and the shadows. That's the first step. So I click on the light menu down here. I kind of drag around the exposure slider, see what I can get away with. So that's the first thing I'm going to do is take the exposure value up by about a stop. And then I'll go down to highlights and shadows and just see what detail I can rescue from those bright areas, see if there's any detail I'm losing in the dark areas. So I'm going to add in a little bit of contrast because when you raise the brightness of your image, you are going to flatten things out and wash it out a little bit. So I'm going to add back some contrast. In Lightroom Mobile, you can always hold your finger down to compare your edits versus the original. And already you can see just by bringing up the exposure, I'm getting a much better overall atmosphere than I was before. From the light menu, I'm going to jump over to the effects menu and play a little bit with clarity. Now, clarity is a bit of a polarizing tool. A lot of people overuse it. They'll drag it way up to get this really dramatic, contrasty look, but it does two things. Number one, it just looks very artificial and unnatural. The second thing about it is that it washes out your image, kind of robs it of all the saturation, especially in those midtones and shadows. So I'm going to add a little bit of clarity just to bring out the detail and all this really nice texture. And I'm going to add a little texture with the texture tool. And because I did lose some color when making those adjustments, now's the time to jump to the color menu. In the color menu, the first thing I do is play with the vibrance. Vibrance is very similar to saturation. It's just sort of a more balanced way of adjusting the various hues in your image. So I'm generally adjusting vibrance as opposed to saturation. Again, don't go too far with these sliders because you're going to end up with quite an unnatural look, even though at first glance it might look really cool. So I'm going to add a little bit of vibrance, and then I'm going to adjust the temperature and the tint. Now, these are white balance tools, and generally we think about white balance as being either correct or incorrect, but they can really be helpful to set an overall style or mood for your image. I'm going to make this image a little bit warmer than it was before, and I'm also going to drag the tint slightly toward magenta because I really dislike green looks. Slight green color casts can look very ugly. It's a very subtle change. What I can do from here is make some more fine-grained color adjustments by hitting the Mix menu here. Obviously, this image is dominated by greens, yellows, a little bit of orange, so that's what I'm gonna choose, the greens, drag the hue slider around, and see where I wanna take this. I can take it more towards the warm side of things and make it more autumny and wintry, or I can try and make the shot look like it was taken during summer and push things a little bit more toward green. Now, I do want these plants in the foreground to stand out from the background, so I'm going to push them towards green. Then I'm going to click yellow, which comprises actually most of this image, and see where I want to take that. And I think I'm going to push that also a little towards green. And then luminance. Luminance is a very underrated adjustment. It's sort of an alternative way of adjusting contrast values in your scene based on the hue rather than the overall brightness. And sometimes I find that taking the luminance down a little bit can give more of a natural contrast curve, almost like a filmic look to your image. So I'm going to take luminance down slightly, maybe go back to the green, see what I can do with luminance, take that down. Maybe I'll see what I can do with the oranges just a little bit. Take those a little towards the warm side and add a little bit of saturation there. The last thing to take care of is the sky. I want to add back a little bit of that contrast and drama. So I'm going to add a local adjustment by going way over here to the left-hand side of the interface and clicking on the Selective tool. With the Selective tool, you want to press this plus button. I'm going to click on the Brush tool and then just drag my finger around. You can see this red overlay shows where I'm going to be making adjustments, and the rest of the image is going to be left alone. Now, whatever effects or adjustments I make will only apply to the sky. So I'm going to go to the Light tab first. I'm going to take that exposure down a little bit. Then I'm going to go to the Effects tab. I'm going to add a little clarity, a little micro contrast. And then I'm going to go to the Color tab. Maybe I can make it a little more saturated on the blue side. And now we have some color and drama added back to our sky. So now I'm done, and from here I'm just going to export it by clicking the share button. And that is my general workflow for any image that I open up in Lightroom Mobile and want to give a quick customized edit to before I share it with my friends and family.